Hi guys, I'm Babalwa Kona. I'm a storyteller, but I didn't start out as a storyteller. I started out as a poet and someone who wrote theatrical pieces. Some of them have been seen in the Grahamstown National Festival, or they're in the Buku National Storytelling Festivals around South Africa. And I had one of my theatre pieces, which was a musical, which toured Europe last year. So storytelling is something that I'm passionate about, and I just hope you enjoy what I'm going to talk about today. It's actually about language as well as identity. So my topic is how the importance of writing as well as telling stories of contemporary interest for children. And I'm going to read. You don't mind, right? Okay. So as a child born and was grown in South African townships in the 90s, I've seen nothing insightful as a story. Stories have built our lives, destroyed them and healed us. Our lives are centered on telling stories. We have family stories, stories we share with our loved ones of how Uncle James walks with socks that are filled with holes when he's drunk in the presence of visitors. Stories of collective experience, like the South African stories we shared on the previous month of August about women and children's abductions and abuses. And through that, we all felt something. We all shared the same feeling. Then we have fairy tales that we work on most of the times, and folk tales, insomi, inganekwane. And in any culture around the world, you would find these. And these stories have protected aunts who molested children or assisted children to suckle the richness and use of language from their grandmothers around fires. All these are rooted in language and identity. As a reader, writer, or teller of children's stories, I'd like to pose these questions to you. Do you think that children enjoy what they're listening to? Yes, of course. Yes.
Depending on the storyteller.
Depending on the storyteller. And I was sure that the answer would be yes most of the time. But are these stories enlightening? Will these stories help children be able to provide healthier engagement with the world? Do the stories perpetuate stereotypes? Or do they build empathy? So because as a reader, writer of children's works, and a childlike person myself, if someone were to ask me what stories I would like to listen to or write, I'd say I'd like to listen or write stories of people who look like me on the outside, of people who feel like me on the inside. Stories whose language is the same as my grandmother's clicks and my schoolmates' twang, because I would not understand the story better. Of stories whom the society perceives they should be unlike me, because the people who are telling the stories, they're not my same race, they're not my same gender, because of those things. And because as a child or any other individual, I wouldn't want to exist in single stories, because there's a danger in perpetuating single stories. I would love to explore. And that's what makes mother tongue essential. It's the only language that can get me closer to that, because with it I can say and mean what I say. It's the language of feeling and culture, and mostly it's the language of love and wisdom. If as a child I didn't acquire any of that, I wouldn't be able to embrace other people's cultures through my own. I wouldn't be able to travel any journey with others, and I wouldn't be able to transfer the skills I learned in my own mother tongue to the other language. So stories, yes, should be intersectional, but mostly should build empathy that surpasses any social, political ideology. It's a good time for children to hear those stories and to be taken to those paths. And I want to make little profound examples that I've written here from our chapters. Sometime we read a story, we read for a child a story about race cars, and he disappointed us because he wanted Sophia stories or stories about Little Mermaid. Through that experience, one thing I discovered was that we did that problematic thing which is called assuming that a child would prefer a car because they are a boy over a doll. And another story I remember is this. Shine provided with books at the beginning of the year, and there are two stories particular that captivated our children. And one is called The Skin We're In. It's written by Makhulu Sindwe Kona, which was way above their level, so we had to translate it in isiXhosa. For them to understand it, it was not only the techniques of storytelling, such as gestures, facial expressions, body language or body movement, but the language. They understood the story through the language because they could understand the feelings of their child, of other children. If they were happy, they felt happy too. If they were sad, they could feel their sadness. Also, another book was Mpumi's Magic Beads. This one I love so much.
Sorry, which one?
Mpumi's Magic Beads. Do you have that one? You don't have the one? You have one, yeah. It's the three girls. The text is thrilling. I read the book with one of the girls, and I remember this other time I read the similar book and I had dreadlocks. One of the children actually changed her hairstyle because he saw me with dreadlocks, and he came on Monday with the dreadlocks and said, "Miss, I told you I'm going to get dreadlocks." And the child saw themselves through me and through a book. And most of the children, they related to those stories because they had green dresses like the children in Mpumi's Magic Beads. They had the white shirts. Also, they had the same hairstyles, just like the girls in the book. So with that, I saw the necessity of inclusion, visibility in stories, as well as the representation, and what I call the necessity of books as superpowers, because fiction becomes reality to children. Linda Sue Parks asked in one of her TED Talks, can a children's books change the world? And I say yes. Can it change the world? Yes, it can change the world, but the question is, what are we telling our children? What is it that we're portraying and we're conveying to these children? Because what matters is what we say to them. And thank you, guys. So do you have any questions, anything that you want to say?
Interestingly enough, I was just thinking, I saw the other day, and this is regarding toys, but I saw the other day that the Barbie line of dolls is actually now creating more gender neutral dolls. I think that's the correct
Yeah.
term. And of course, they've also changed, I think, some of the looks of the dolls so that they are, some with African hair and African or other, maybe Mexican skin.
Yes. And I think I saw, it's amazing. I saw one when the child saw, because the child was in a wheelchair, I saw a video of the child. They saw that doll and they became so mesmerized. So incredible.
I mean, when I was
It's so incredible.
This was just the way it was. Think about it, but isn't it amazing that even as a society, even the toy producers are realizing that representation matters, and that we assign values to what we see in the world around us, and assume our value is less because it's not represented. So, that's not really a story in itself, but it's part of a story.
Yeah.
In a way. I'm really encouraged by efforts in a lot of organizations, and I mean even organizations that are trying to put like pathways to the ocean so that people in wheelchairs can access it. I mean, simple things like that. Of course, those things become tricky because there's a cost involved. Yeah. But it's quite amazing when we create spaces where people feel included.
If they can do a big inauguration for the president, they can definitely do that pathway to the beach. Right? They can.
And what I've learned about storytelling is that when you read a story, you have to own it before you give it to a second person. If you don't, because I remember about that book with the girl with the dreadlocks. I read it in the sequence. And oh my word, the words they used there, I didn't understand those words. But because I know that story, I owned it. It was easy for me to tell to another person.
I also think that the value of telling stories is so important in the work we do because people want to know why is what we're doing making a difference. And no matter what kind of charts I show or what kind of numbers I give you or this many kids, if I can tell you a story about a child, that touches more hearts than any kind of charts and statistics. I mean, learning to tell a story is really quite important.
That's true. Anything else? Because my time's up.
I think when it comes to learning or knowing which stories are suitable or better, or which stories kids are going to enjoy, I think as an individual, like myself in my organization, where we actually sit with some aftercare kids.
Yeah.
Some kids wait for their transport. So if we see kids that do attain our literacy hour, we just take them and then we run, maybe we do an exercise where I, in a story, I'll say, maybe once upon a time, there was a little girl with long hair, and then
Change stories, yes, the change stories, yeah.
through that, I get to know and understand which different parts or different types of the stories that they would like to hear.
Yeah, it's true.
Instead of us telling them about cars and their legs and everything, and then get to tell them stories that are relatable.
Because it was one of the books, and the learning partners love hiding that book. I understand it's not in the children's levels. It's a crazy. Remember the book, the superhero book? Yeah, it's an amazing book because one thing I loved about it was the fact that all the stupid things that happened, they aligned with the children's ancestry. It was amazing. Even the superheroes wore the Basotho blankets, and it was incredible. And they loved it because they always asked for it, especially with Azili. All the time, you usually got children who are, those learners who are doing very well. So you usually got those kids, and those kids were able to even read the stories on their own. It was incredible. Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, how do you engage a child that's very shy? Let's say I'm telling a story to a group of 10, and then you get those child who are very dominant and very strong, and then they'll be answering, giving questions, and then you get maybe those 2 kids or 1 child that's very resourceful, very shy, and you want to engage them, but you don't want to put them in the hot seat or the spotlight.
Right, yeah.
How would you do that as a storyteller?
Usually what I do when we're sitting in a circle, just after I usually put those children that everyone doesn't like and those children next to me. They should be next to the queen. I do that. But during the session, I always say to my learning partners that they should touch the child. They should always touch the child because most of the children were shy. They're dealing with a lot. I understand that children who are not dealing with a lot but who are still shy. But most of the time I say they should touch the children. And to me, there's magic in touching the child and playing them and even pinching them at times and even scaring them. If there's a lion, roar next to their ear so they enjoy the story, do that. And they even, they let loose and they become confident because in one of the stories that I wrote, I had a child like that. And the child, I didn't believe it. When they took a video of that child, she was actually animating next to me. I was animating, but she was also doing the animation. And she was she was very at risk, and she had a very low self-esteem, but she's now, and she doesn't care if she doesn't get it right. She does it anyway.
The different the things that we use when we take through the pictures and everything.
Because the reason I'm saying touch the child, play with them, they should be like next to you, they should be a part of you. The fact that you can do all of those things, but a shy child will always be a shy child. They would just okay, so because they are like okay, so, and some of them they don't even reply. During they don't. It really frustrates me when I take children. It really frustrates me because I usually want to play with them, so that's why I pinch them, and I say they must tease me. I tease them back with all those things. So I think we should just be on their level most of the time. That's the most important
And
thing.
also, I think giving them time if they're shy. We know that all of us, I'm not going to tell you like the secrets because I've just met you. And I don't know if I can trust you. And a lot of kids have been like hurt by adults. And so
Yeah.
they're very wary because that's how you protect yourself.
Self,
So
yeah.
you just have to keep showing up and keep doing the right thing. And you don't know what's going on in that child's mind. They could be taking it all in and learning massive amounts.
Yeah.
But they're just not, for some kids, speaking is not safe. So they don't do that. So that's okay. You just have to keep showing up and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I agree that touch can be very powerful. Sometimes though it can be frightening for some kids.
Yeah.
Touching so it needs to be individualized.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to just keep investing the time to work out what works with that child.
Because this just reminded me. Last year we had a child and she had a learning partner was a guy, a male person, and every time the learning partner because she was so shy that every time the learning partner got closer to, she would do this. Every time they would do this, they would even sit at the edge of a chair. And I went to the teacher to ask about this child, and I heard the story. So one thing I did was to take the child from the guy and place it next to a woman. Do you know what? How the child did so well during every time she did so. Everyone was surprised on the center at the end of the year because the child graduated, and she graduated with flying colors. So sometimes you should do that because some learning partners don't. I'm not saying they don't communicate well. They don't gel well with other children. Yeah.